All right, I really didn't think I was going to be introduced as the losingest chaplain in the history of the NFL. Jason, that's never happened anywhere in the country at any other church. Thank you, Community Christian. Yes, only you would do that to a new speaker. And we've never been here. And by the way, a lot of those losses were at Soldier Field. I'm not kidding. We lost every time we came there. And I was on the sideline during the games. And I tell you what, honestly, the Bears fans are some of the best fans in the country. Not kidding. I got to tell you, though, honestly, right up there is Green Bay. They're right up there. Woo! We hate Green Bay. I know. Well, let me ask you this. Is there anybody, seriously, anybody, not even one, Lions fan?
Oh, look.
Are you really a Lions fan?
It's a miracle.
All right, if you're a Lions fan, you got to tell me, who's our head coach? All right, you're not a Lions fan. Who's our head coach? Who's our head coach? All right, here you go. I'm giving you one of our books. There you go. You didn't say you're a Lions fan, though, and you fumbled that thing. He dropped the pass. You could play for the Lions.
His brother is.
He could play for the Lions. Anyway, all right. So, yeah, if you want our book, we'll talk to you in the lobby. But we are really excited to be here. I've known Dave for years and known about Community Christian and never been here in all these years.
This is great.
And just love what we've seen so far. And we have 30 minutes, so we're going to go. We got to go.
I have said nothing.
I know. Go ahead. Say what you want.
See, this is what we were talking about.
But she talks a lot in our marriage, let me tell you. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. It's interesting as you think about together, and I know we're not talking just about marriage, but relationships and family. One of the things that we all know is this, is marriage and relationships and family are awesome, right? Not really? You can't even say it's awesome sometimes? Sometimes it's wonderful, sometimes incredible. In fact, a few years back, we went on like our 30th year anniversary little trip to New York. We'd never been to Manhattan. It was like great time, right? Great shows. We went to Broadway shows, great food everywhere,
awesome.
Great sex. I'm just checking to see if it was.
We have never even started like this. I'm like, where are you going with this? It was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. So that means it wasn't. That's what that means. But anyway, it was one of those special,
it was.
Like 4 or 5 days. It was right before the football season. We got away, and the football season is always really a hard season for us in
Detroit. But have you ever done that where you've gotten away and you just kind of take a breath and like, whoa, we're at a really good spot right now. Like this feels really good.
And there are moments in your marriage, in your family, in relationships that are wonderful. And that's why we love it. But we also know it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know that getting married, and maybe you did, but we didn't. We got married I was 22, she was 19. I actually had hair, had a little bang I used to flip over. But when we got married, we sort of thought we're so in love.
We love Jesus.
We love Jesus. We're going into ministry. We actually went to a Weekend to Remember, Family Life Weekend to Remember in Chicago. Mm-hmm. As college students that we were told you have to go to this conference before you get married because you don't know what marriage is about. So we went to it. We didn't take notes the whole weekend, not kidding. Because we just thought it can't be hard.
How hard can it be? Why are they taking notes? And so we really did. We got married, not even thinking that our backgrounds would affect us. And we started our first job in Lincoln, Nebraska to be the chaplains for all the sports teams there. And if you would have asked me on my wedding day, tell me what Dave Wilson's weaknesses are, I would have said, weaknesses? Like, I don't think he really has any.
She was right.
And then we were driving to Nebraska. We were in this huge fight. And
married 6 months.
6 months. I looked at Dave, and I really thought, there's nothing that I really like about him. I'm not kidding, that's what I thought. And then I yelled at the top of my lungs, marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life.
6 months. I mean, our wedding day, the happiest, it's just, we love each other, it's gonna be awesome, we love Jesus, went to a conference, we got it all down, and I'm driving and she's screaming, marrying you, the biggest decision of worst decision of my life. And I was so mature, I'm like, you're right, what were we thinking? It was just
we didn't even know where to go from there.
So hard. We get to Nebraska, we start, this ministry with college athletes. They want us to lead a marriage Bible study. Not kidding. And we're like, you don't want us to do this. But we pulled out that manual from the Weekend to Remember, which we now speak for, we've been speaking 30 years for the Weekend to Remember, and we do radio for Family Life. But, we didn't even know what was in that manual. We literally didn't listen all weekend because we're like, who needs this? Now we're like, what's in here? And so we started teaching that, but it was like during that period that one night, again, we're fighting every night, and we're going to talk about conflict in this session. Okay, we'll get there in a second, but we're fighting, and I get out of bed at like 3 in the morning. I just can't stand to be in the bed with her. And I go downstairs, and I open the Bible, and I get on my knees, and I pray.
And I walk in right then because he's not in bed. I'm thinking, where did he go? And I find him down there on his knees with the Bible on the couch. And I'm thinking, oh, good, at least he's spending time with God. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm just sitting here reading Paul's words. To live is Christ and to die is gain. And he said, I just told God that I would rather be dead than to be married to you. Who says that out loud?
Go ahead and laugh. A really dark moment in our marriage, you're laughing at it, but it is interesting. I now know you don't say everything you're thinking to your spouse. You're going to write something down, write that down. There are some things that should never be spoken out loud, but we were counseled by someone before marriage. You share every intimate detail. So I thought I was honoring her by saying, well, I'll be honest. I literally just read that it'd be better to be in heaven with Jesus. I said, I'd rather be there than married to you. And she just stood there. And here's the thing. We're laughing now, and it is a pretty funny story, but if you were there then, that's where I was. That's where we were. Sort of the story we just saw, we're all like, what happened? We were there. We were thinking, should have never got married. I'd rather die, and I meant it. God, just take me home. This is so hard.
And we didn't get it either because we were following Jesus. We loved Jesus. We'd surrendered everything to follow him. And yet we were really still struggling with each other.
And we sort of thought, if you follow Jesus and you're doing, his will, it's going to be easy. Well, here's what we've learned, and that's what we wrote about vertical marriage, is if you have Jesus, you have hope, but it doesn't make it easier. Sometimes it's harder, but you have the piece of the puzzle you need to make this work. I'm going to bet this story, which I don't even know the ending, has something to do with Jesus. Am I right? I'm going to guess that has been the answer, and he is. And so we're going to take a little bit of time and say, okay, if that's true, what's that look like? And one of the areas we decided, there's so many things we could talk about, and in the next 21 minutes, which is going to be crazy, we won't finish this talk. We'll finish it in our workshop, so come back later if you want to hear the rest of it, because we want to honor the time. But one of the areas that you really need to understand, okay, if I have a relationship with Christ and we have a relationship with Christ, how does that impact a marriage? That's why we wrote the book, and say, okay, it's one thing to say go vertical in your marriage relationship with Jesus. So what's that look like in conflict and in the bedroom and in communication? So let's tackle this one area, conflict, because if you know anything about marriage or relationships, it is the number one thing that will determine the health and future of your relationship. Did you know that? How a couple handles conflict determines the health and future of the relationship, of their marriage, of their family, of a business, of a church. Because here's the thing. We all have conflict. Am I right? Everybody has conflict in some area of their life. Detroit Lions had a lot of conflict in the locker room.
They still do.
So do the Bears. Everybody does. Companies do. Churches do. The question isn't whether you're going to have conflict. The question is like, do you know what to do with it? And most couples have no idea. We got married, never had any idea. What do we do with conflict? And here's the first thing you can write down if you want to write something down. There's basically 4 styles or patterns when it comes to conflict. When conflict happens in your relationship, you'll divert to one of these. And the first one is win. Some people are like winners. They like conflict. They're good at conflict. When it happens, they bring out fingerprints and eyewitnesses and pictures,
They just attack it. They're not afraid to enter into it.
Yeah.
So the second one is the person that will yield. And what will happen is there'll be an argument or they'll be in a conflict, but for the sake of the relationship, they'll give in. They may not agree with this spouse, but they'll give in for the sake of the relationship just to make peace.
And the third one is withdraw. They don't like conflict, they'll leave. I mean, literally sometimes leave the room or get in their car and drive away for a day or 15 weeks. I'm kidding. But, they just don't like it. Or if they can't get away, they'll just sort of shut down and you can't engage them. And then the last one is what we want to sort of get to today is resolve. Some people are good at resolving. In fact, they have just sort of an angst like, we can't stop this conflict till we resolve this. And they're good at it. Now, I know you don't know us very well. And so and we didn't know this when we got married. We didn't even know there are different patterns. And a lot of times you copy what you saw in your home. Sometimes you do the opposite. Sometimes you do a mix of some of these. But here's the thing I didn't know. Guess what I married? I married a winner.
That's right.
Capital W. I mean, really from
Yeah.
part of
Well,
it from her
my
family.
And so often I think it's really good to discuss how did your family handle conflict? Because my family, if there was an argument, we'd sit down at the table. Sometimes we would yell, but we would get into it. And that was just a part of it. It was okay. I wasn't afraid of it.
And so she married, guess what I am? I'm not anymore, I'm perfect now. But guess what I was? I was a withdrawer. And again, it isn't always connected to your family of origin, but mine sort of was. Mom and dad were alcoholics, fought all the time, got divorced when I was 7 years old. And again, I'd never thought this through, but I sort of had this perspective. Conflict is bad, you avoid it at all costs. And so I never really entered into conflict. Girls I dated, I just got in a conflict, I'd move on. I'm the quarterback on the college football team, I've got options, I move on. How arrogant is that? But that's what I do. And so we get married, and we have no idea this is coming into our marriage, right? And so I remember we were just in our first couple months of marriage, we're living with our parents for a few months. We're raising support to become missionaries with Cru to go to the University of Nebraska. Anyway, we're there. Our families all left for the day. We're in Findlay, Ohio. Anybody know Findlay, Ohio? Anyway, a little town in northwest Ohio. And summer day, windows are open, and we get in a fight. And again, I don't even know this is my style. We're in the family room. We start getting some fight. I get up, literally, and walk out of the room. Not even knowing I'm a withdrawer. I'm doing what I saw my dad do. I leave the room, and I'm walking into the kitchen, and she yells from the family room.
Well, this is our first big fight. We only dated 9 months. We'd only been really together a few months. And so he gets up, he leaves the room, and he does this. And he walks
I don't
out.
remember that part, by the way. She's
No,
lying
I
and making
remember.
that up. But
And I am like, so you guys, I get all riled up, the winner, and I said, where are you going? Come back here and fight like a man, you chicken.
that's what she yells. That is not what she yells. Come back and fight. And so I'll never forget. I turn around, I look at her, and I go, oh, yeah, well, bleep you.
Which,
I cursed. That's a long time ago. Okay, that's 40 years ago. I'm not doing that now. But I did. I just cursed, and I turned to walk away. By the way, I didn't even put these dots together until years later. You know what I did right there? Exactly what I saw my dad do. The sins of the father. I didn't know that was in the Bible are going to go down to the legacy. I was doing it. Of course, I don't know any of this. I just like, bleep you, because I don't know what to do. And I turn like, I'm out of here. And here's what I hear. I'll never forget this. I turn away, and she goes, oh, yeah? Well, bleep you. That's what she said, and I turned to her. I'd never heard her curse
which
in my life.
I really never did, but he brought it out of me.
And she says that. I just looked at her like, you sinner. You know, you cursed that I'm out. I did. I was like, oh, and I took off.
So he starts walking up the stairs, and I'm right behind him. He goes into a bedroom, sits on the bed. I open the door. I sit right down beside him, and I said, we need to talk about this.
Yeah, she's sitting right there.
I put my hand on his leg. He flips my hand
Yeah,
off.
I'm like, what? And here's what I was thinking. What are you doing? I've never done this in 22 years of my life. I don't think I'd one time ever engaged in a conflict. I had always found a way to withdraw. And so she's sitting there, and I'm like, get out of here. And she's like the opposite. What are you doing? We need to talk. We need to work this through, because she had seen you can get resolution. So here's the thing. I used to think conflict was bad. You avoid it at all costs. Here's what I now know. Conflict is good. Actually, conflict is neutral. How you handle it determines it can be good. God can actually use it in your marriage, in your family, in your business, in your church.
to make you better.
To bring great things out of it. But if you don't handle it correctly, what happens? You tend toward isolation, could end up in divorce. Many couples end up in divorce because they just don't know how to do conflict well. You can do it well. I am no longer a withdrawer. It's still in there, isn't it? It's still in there.
But
Like,
you're good at
can we
it.
just like talk about this, at Easter? It's like, do we have to? But I know I have to step in and I have to engage. So here's all we want to do. And again, we're going to fly through this pretty quick. But and again, just get the book. There's 4 chapters just on this. But here's just some thoughts, and they all start with the letter S, so you'll remember this, on how to handle conflict. The first one I think is really important. When conflict happens in your relationship, maybe you're in one right now. We should do a little testimony. Stand up and say if you're in a fight right now. We're not going to do that.
Or even with your kids, with your family.
Oh, it's your family. But, and it could be true. Here's the first thing you got to do in a conflict. Shut up. And I mean, I was like going to, wordsmith this in a way that'd be real cute. No, it's that simple. Stop talking and start what? Listening. See, in a conflict, we often don't listen. And here's the thing. When you listen, you'll find out there's a story behind the story. There's something going on behind what she or he is saying. right? And by the way, don't do this. This is what happens at Together or marriage conferences. We do this when the speaker says something, we go, like this is for you. Don't do that, all right? Just hold this right here, right? Don't do that. It's like, no, this is for you. This isn't for her or him. This is for you, because you're like, you never shut. Don't do that. That is not going to go well during the break or tonight, you know? So this is for you, and I think God is talking to you. It's like, you may be in one right now. You may be in one right now. What would happen if you just shut up and said, honey, tell me what this is about?
I mean, and don't you love how practical scriptures are? Like, look at James 1:19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to what? Listen. Slow to what? Speak. And slow to become what? But don't we do the opposite?
Yeah.
We're so quick to become angry. We're so quick to speak that so often we don't just listen.
And we're so selfish, we see it in our spouse and not in ourselves.
Yeah.
Some of you already did that right there. Oh, she is. He is. No. This is for you and me. So here's what we're going to do real quick. We'll tell you a quick story. It's not really quick, but a story that took place in our life. Listen to it and watch what we did well and what we did poorly, and if we listened, okay? So it was a Sunday morning at our church. I was preaching at one of our campuses, and we had 3 services at that campus, so it was between the second and third service. I know you do the same thing here, multi-site, right? So I'm walking out. We were renting a high school at the time. I'm in the lobby, and people are driving in, and there's a couple minutes before the last service. And just before, like 5 minutes before the service starts, I see Ann, our car, whip into the parking lot, take a parking spot right by the front door, you know, and she comes walking up. It's a spring day. It's sort of cold, but it's nice out. So I see her walk up, and she's all excited. She's got 2 of our sons, who are teenagers at the time. Yeah. And she comes walking up to me, and she's all excited. And she says, what'd she say? God gave me this spot.
No. Here's my side. So you're going to hear both sides, okay? So I have 2 teenagers. They're late. There's a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so they're so late that I'm whipping in the parking lot because everybody's there. So I whip in there. I'm like, look at this spot. Thank you, Jesus. And I pull in that spot. We come out. Dave's not usually at the door greeting everyone, but it's nice. I'm like, so I see him like, look at you greeting everybody today.
So she's laughing and smiling, and I lean over and I go, move the car. Just like that.
I said, no, Jesus gave me that spot.
And I'm like, Jesus did not give you that spot. Move the car. She's like, I'm not moving the car. So I grab the keys, I flip them to Austin.
And I stand in front of our 16-year-old son like, no, he's not moving the car.
And so we're having this little conflict, and at the same time I'm going, hey, welcome to Kensington. Dave's never done that, right? Like, how you doing? Come on in. I'm like, move the car. You got to move the car. And then I'm finally like, I got to go preach. Move the car. And I took off.
So I walk into the building.
And she didn't move the car, by the way.
No, I didn't move the car. And I sit in the very back row. And I have my arms crossed, and I'm like, I don't even like the pastor of this church.
And I'm up there preaching. I'm not kidding. I'm just doing this whole thing. And every time I saw her, I'd just be like, and I'd keep going. I mean, we were just in it, right? And so I get home, and I walk in the door. And you ever have a conflict that's still going?
And by the way, so from that first year of marriage, we really started getting better. But here's the truth about marriage. It does this, doesn't it? You go through hills and valleys but what you don't know is the valley doesn't last forever. So we had gotten better, but we had been married a while when this happened, and we were teaching marriage stuff and principles.
Yeah, try living it. So we walk in, and as soon as I see her, I start saying, I can't believe you did that. And we start going at it pretty loudly. We don't yell much anymore, but we were getting heated. And I'll never forget my youngest son, Cody, who was 13. He's now on staff with me at our church, but he was sitting there, and at some point, because we're going back and forth for 5 or 6 minutes, he literally like raises his hand. And I remember we're so into it, I'm like, what do you want? You could tell I'm a little, mad. And he goes, hey, don't you and mom travel around the country and teach couples how to resolve conflict? That's what he says. I'm like, yeah. He goes, could you show me? I'm like, sit there, young man, you're gonna watch. So we go at it, right? Now here's the thing. Some of you are like, what is the conflict about? I'll tell you, all right? Here's what the conflict is about. When you start a church, when you're one of the founders, and I was a co-founder with Steve Andrews, you set the core values, right? So you know what one of our core values, I'm not saying it should be your core value or any other church core value, but ours was the people that are involved and members of our church and are serving, they take the worst parking spots. We leave the best parking spots for the unchurched people.
They
right
were
by the
already
front door.
there. I was so late, they were already there.
They were not already there. So I see the pastor's wife pull in and violate a core value. This is sin before God, right in front of his face. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you can't do that, you know? I just couldn't believe it. So that's why we're fighting, right? And it gets so bad, she just goes upstairs. She leaves. And I remember when she leaves, I'm like, you know you're wrong. You should leave. And she goes upstairs. And so I'll never forget, I'm sitting there at one end of the kitchen table, and there's Cody. He just looks at me like, that was impressive, you know, because it was going really bad.
Well,
and so she goes upstairs for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed to tell you what I was doing. Have you ever done this in a conflict? I went upstairs. I needed some time to build my case. Have you ever done that? So I'm upstairs, and I'm start thinking about all this stuff, and that's what we do. We start building our case. And I've really learned that's not the first step that you should take in conflict. So I build my case. I'm up there for a while. And I come down and I make this grand entrance. And I walk into the kitchen and I go like this. Here's the truth.
No. She went, here's the truth, really loud.
I do everything around here. Everything. While you're at church and people are, oh, you're so awesome. I am cooking and cleaning. I'm taking care of our kids. I'm mowing the grass. I take care of the cars. Oh, you're leading the Bible study. You're so awesome, Dave. But I am getting it done. I snowboard just to be with all you guys. I wakeboard just to be with you guys. I'm doing all this stuff. You don't even know all the stuff I do. So if there's one day in the history of our lives that there's a parking spot by the front door, I should get to take it. Oh, yes!
Hi. I'm okay with some women clapping, but you dudes, seriously? You gotta take care of me here. No, you should be clapping, because when you hear that, you're like, wow. And by the way, she doesn't mow the yard. That's a little...
I totally do.
She does. She likes it, though. I let her because she likes it, but she really does. But I mow it, too, and our boys mow it. But anyway, who cares about that? Here's the thing. So she really does that. And it's just Cody and I sitting there, and she does this big boom for like 3 minutes, and then she says that. So I should be able to take it. And it gets real quiet. And it was so funny because I look over, and Cody looks at me. Again, he's 13. There's not a word spoken. He just looked at me like, Dad, you're toast. You know? Not a word spoken, but his look was like, wow, you're... And so she says that. And so here's what I said. I look at her and I said, so let me ask you a question. And by the way, my tone is just like this. Mm-hmm. It's calm now. Calm. While she was upstairs building her case, I was downstairs, and I did something we're not even going to have time to talk about, but another thing you should do.
It's the most important thing, I think.
It's the most important thing you should do in a conflict. I prayed and surrendered this conflict to Jesus.
I didn't, obviously.
Yeah. So she's upstairs, and, you know, she's gone for a while, and again, you need to take some time, settle your heart, and I was just sitting there. Cody didn't even know it. I just silently said, Jesus, I'm missing something. I give this to you. Could you show us how to get to resolution? I don't know what I'm missing. So it's yours. And again, this is just a silent prayer. That's what going vertical in vertical marriage means. You connect with your Father. You connect with your Creator. You're never going to find life from your spouse. The whole world thinks you're gonna. The bachelor thinks you're gonna. The bachelorette thinks you're gonna. This person's going to give me my life. Nope, won't work. We all know that, right? It just takes a few months. And so we think, you know, I married the wrong person when we're disappointed. The truth is, I'm looking in the wrong place. When you go vertical, the Creator, your relationship with God, that's a real relationship, fills you. Yes. And then instead of finding or taking from your spouse what you need, you have what you need, you give. Yes. So that's, again, in 2 minutes, what vertical means. So there I am going vertical. She doesn't know that. She comes down, she yells, and then I say this. So let me ask you a question. Do you feel like our church, Kensington, is more important to me than you are? And that's all she did. She just shook her head, and I went, oh, there it is.
And isn't
there
it
is. That was the conflict. Think about it. I said, shut up and listen. There's a story behind the story. That's the story. That this whole parking spot story was, I thought it was about a parking spot. which she's still never going to park in. I thought it was about a parking spot. It was never about it. What was it about? Anybody? Did you hear it? Do you feel like my job's more important to you? Yes. Oh my gosh, it's about feeling loved and cherished, which is what we're going to talk about in our workshop. What a woman really longs for, I was not given her. Sorry, I interrupted you.
But I think so often we do that, is what would it look like in a conflict if we went to God first? And if we said to him, we just kind of even just separate for a while, and we'll get into that, and that was one of the other things. What it would look like if we separate and said, God, what am I missing? What are the deeper issues? Because so often our conflict is surfacey, even with our kids. It seems like it's about this, but it really is this cry for something else. And if we ask God, God, what is the cry of their heart? What's happening right now? God is the revealer. He'll always show us what that is if we go to him.
Yeah, and again, we had 5 S's. We're going to do 2. All right? We just did shut up. Let me give you the last one I already told you. Throw it in there. We won't have time to do it, but surrender to Jesus. I just sort of showed you that. Again, these aren't in order. That would be number 5. But here's the second one. It's the only time we'll have time for, and then if you want, we'll dive into some of these when you come back. But the second one is this, and I didn't know I was going to do this, but I did it. I just modeled it. Shut up is 1. Number 2 is soft answer. Respond gently. And again, you're thinking, in a conflict, when you're mad, how can you respond gently? Surrender. It's the only way you can. There's the only way you can. And again, sometimes you have to step away for a few seconds or count to 15, or as Mark Twain said, count to 100, whatever. It's like you need some time, but respond gently, because if you escalate and they escalate, there you go. But if one person escalates and the other de-escalates, you don't have a conflict. You can't fight with somebody that won't fight. And so what happens when one of them de-escalates, now the other has to come down, and now you can talk. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, if you ever read Emerson Eggerich's book about, who should make the first move, think about this in conflict. If one's escalating, the other escalates, and it's like somebody has to make the first move to de-escalate, he says, well, who should make the first move? And we always think, well, my spouse should. They should. No. You know what he says? Whoever's most mature, make the first move. Uh-oh. So make the first move to de-escalate. I love what Proverbs 15:1 says. It says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
So true.
And so it was really interesting. And again, we'll just sort of touch on this, and then we got a break. But here's the thing. When you think about what really takes a conflict toward more conflict, but the opposite toward resolution, there's a guy named John Gottman. Not a church guy, not a Christian guy, just a marriage therapist. He watches couples fight or have conflict for 15 minutes and will tell you if they're going to stay married or get divorced. He's 98% right. 15 minutes watching patterns, things they do. And one of the things he says he looks for is contempt. It's really interesting. Here's what contempt is. It is the single best, this is from Gottman, it is the single best predictor of relationship breakdowns. Contempt is an attitude of superiority, speaking down to your partner through name-calling or direct insults. The critic diagnoses the problem as a defect in their spouse and sees the relationships in terms of what is missing instead of focusing on the positive things about their spouse and their relationship. And man, when you do that in a conflict.
I'm just going to admit, I really did that in our relationship. I looked at it as if Dave was clueless. If he would only get his act together, we would be way better. I started, without really realizing, I started critiquing him a ton. And I'm a visual learner and teacher, and so sometimes I'll come up with visuals to try to show
Don't show the video, though.
Oh, okay.
We don't have time.
Okay.
I'd rather say this, because I want to end in the next couple minutes,
Okay.
and that'll take us 2 minutes over. We'll show that video at the workshop. But the story that I just want to end with about contempt in our marriage was basically, we were speaking at a conference, and I'll just tell you what happened. Ann was teaching mothers of preschool. She asked me to come along, said, share whatever you want. I get up during the thing and say, women, I don't know if you understand this, but as little boys, we have people cheering for us our whole life. We're good at something, a teacher, a coach, or whatever. We get married. It's like you are cheering for us, saying, of all the people in the world, I choose to marry you. And I'm telling this, and I haven't told Ann any of this. She's sitting right there.
Yeah, I'm thinking, oh, this is good. I've never heard you share this.
Yeah, so I'm up here, and I said, then we get married, and it's like, man, you're cheering us. You're our cheerleader. And then after a few years married, we walk in the house, and all we hear is, boo, boo.
And I am like, what are you talking about? And I don't even know how we ended that session, but we got in the car, and I said, what are you talking about? I don't boo you. I am helping you. Have you ever thought that? Like, the reason I'm critiquing you is, and I said that, I see the weaknesses. I am helping you to be better. And what he said is, it doesn't feel like, it's not helping. And I said, I know. But what I realized, I went to God after that and said, God, do I continually boo Dave? And God said, yes. You think that by critiquing him and criticizing him, you're changing him. You're making him run away from you. And it was really convicting for me because I realized I really thought I was helping him, but I really did think, if you would just get your act together, I am doing so much. And so I had this attitude of contempt, and he felt it. And I think when I went to God, I started deciding, I'm going to go to God first, and I'm going to ask God certain questions. Should I say anything? And a lot of times God will say, say nothing. And then if he says, if I should say anything, I say, God, what should I say and how should I say it? If we could just put into practice those things of bringing God into our conflict and asking him some simple questions, it can change our whole relationship.
And I'll just say this. That turning point was almost 30 years ago. We're going on our 40th year in May, and she changed. And again, we'll talk about this later, but she became my biggest cheerleader. And it wasn't like, oh, now I'm just this amazing guy that should be cheered. She cheered me when I didn't deserve it. And here's what I'll just say. And I didn't know this is how it works, but this is how it works. She started saying to me, you're an amazing man. It's like, here's where I am. And she started saying, no, this is what I see. You're an amazing man. You're an amazing husband. And I remember looking at her first like, you're lying, because you've never said that. You've always said this. You're an amazing spiritual leader of our boys. I'm like, I really was suspicious. Like, no, I'm not. You've always said, and so I was like living here, and she kept saying, this is who you are. And again, after a period of time, I realized she actually sees this in me. She wasn't booing me. She was cheering me. And here's how it works, okay? When you speak life into somebody, not death, and the power of life and death is in the tongue, Proverbs 18:21. When you start speaking life, here's what happens, at least for men. And I'm guessing the same thing's true for women.
It does.
I started rising up to be the man she said I was that I actually wasn't yet. To make any sense? It's like, no, and so she would say that, and again, we have so many stories to this, but it's like, really? And I started to change to become the man she said I was that I wasn't yet, but I was becoming because she said that's who I was. That's the opposite of contempt.
Yeah.
And you talk about shut up and soft answer. It's like when you start speaking life to somebody in the middle of a conflict, the conflict sort of becomes secondary and the relationship becomes primary, and then you have a way out. And again, the last thing we'll say is this, that all is impossible. And I mean this. It is impossible without Jesus.
And I'll add this too. When I do this every day now because I was so bad at it, it's almost like I'm worried to ever go back there. And I would say to God, God, show me the things, show me the greatness you put into Dave. Show me the greatness that you put into our sons. And God, give me a way to speak it, to see it, and to speak it. And because you know why? Because the Father is always speaking life to us.
Yep.
The enemy is speaking lies and accusations, but the Father is always speaking because he sees who he made us to be. And so he's always speaking life to us. And that's what we should be doing in our homes. And it takes a while to break some of those bad habits.
And so here it is. We're going to pray for you, and then we're going to take a break. But I would just say the song we sang, we came in. Never heard it before, by the way. We don't do that at our church, so I videoed it and said, we're doing that song from now on. Thank you. But I don't know what the word was, but there's nothing he can't do. Mm-hmm. It's Jeremiah 27. There's nothing he can't do. He can save your marriage. So maybe you're sitting right now, it's like, wow, we are where you guys were year one. You can be where we are now, and we're not perfect, but we are at a place today in year 40, more in love with each other today than we were on our wedding day, which I thought was impossible. That's the power of God. Yeah. That's what Jesus does. And you can walk out there and go, okay, we're going to, shut up, and we're going to soft answer. Good luck with that. It won't work. But if you say we're going to surrender, and by the way, they may not. It's not about them. It's about you. Will you surrender? If you surrender, you have a chance. There's nothing God can't do, and let him work. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for who you are. You are the great I am. You have the power we need in Jesus the resurrected power of Jesus that's given to us through the Holy Spirit living in our temple, in our lives. And we need him. We need you. So we surrender. We give our marriage. We give our lives. We give our family. We give our future to you, all of it. We say, Jesus, be our King. Absolute, full surrender to you. Jesus, we go vertical and we ask you to work a miracle in us, in me, and then through us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.